Okay, I'm doing this video for my friend Mark. He's trying to get this knife sharpened, and so came to the expert here in Kentucky. And okay, Sam, would you show us the best way for him to get his knife sharpened?
Okay, it's pretty basic. There's three things that have to happen to get a good edge on a knife. Three-step process. So the first thing is, this knife, I just finished making it, so it hasn't been sharpened yet. It's still pretty dull. So to get a knife truly sharp, what you have to do is you're going to have to work this edge down, get it ground down or sharpened down.
And it's the same way with the resharpening,
yeah,
right?
It'll be the same way with the resharpening. Once you sharpen it down or dull it down enough that it's not razor sharp anymore, you're going to have to go through this process. Of course, naturally, the more dull it is, maybe the coarser grit that you're going to have to start with. But we're going to say for most purposes, you're going to start with somewhere around 400 grit. You can use like silicone carbide
400
sand.
grit what? What are we talking about?
Well, it'd be like same as a sandpaper.
Oh, okay.
400 grit. So you could use a good quality sandpaper on a hard surface. This is just a cheap diamond sharpening stone that I use a lot. So first thing here is mainly you've got to watch your angle when you're sharpening. So we're going to start, my knives are ground pretty thin, so you can start at a low sharpening angle. Something I'm going to say around 20 degrees to 22 degrees.
Okay, we're going to get close up. There you go. Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make about 6 passes across on this side. And try to make sure I get all the way out to the tip as I come out through there. Okay, now I'm going to come back here and try to duplicate that on the opposite side. And this is just trying to get it down fairly thin. Okay, that's probably all we have to do on that one. Now we're going to switch to 600 grit, and it's just going to be the exact same process. And at this point, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to continue to sharpen it at a consistent angle until we have what's called a wire edge on the edge of the knife. And
what does a wire edge mean?
Well, what it means is you've sharpened it down to a really fine point and really fine thin edge, but the steel is very tough. So as we sharpen this way, there's actually going to be a little layer of steel that's going to bend up.
Oh, okay.
And then when we flip it over and go this way, the edge, it's going to bend up this way. Okay. And once we create a wire edge, to continue to go back and forth on the stone is actually just wasting your time.
Okay.
So once we can actually establish that wire edge, there's a couple ways. Sometimes if you hold it in the light just right, you can see it. You can also take your fingernail
and feel it catch. Okay.
It looks to me like we've probably about got that on this. I'm going to go ahead and make a couple more passes on this knife just to be sure. Because if we don't have a wire edge, the full length of that edge, it won't get sharp for us. So we're going to make sure we get that wire edge. What happens, a lot of people will sharpen and think, well, it feels pretty good, but they'll try to cut paper or do something and it won't cut good. And then they'll just continue to sharpen and sharpen. What's happening is you've probably got a super fine wire edge on there and it's not truly sharp. So at this point, we're going to say we've got that wire edge on the knife. Now there's a couple ways to get rid of the wire. One of the simplest ways is, since you've got we're going to say you've got 600 grit,
right,
is what you're finishing up here. If this was our original sharpening angle,
right,
we're going to bump that up to almost double the original sharpening angle.
You're going to angle it.
Yeah, very steep.
Okay.
But now we're not going to use any pressure.
Okay.
We're just going to more or less let the knife float.
Okay.
And all we're trying to do is to get that wire edge abraded off.
So you have just the sharp
So you've
edge.
just got that fine edge. So what I usually do is try to make about 2 passes on each side.
Okay.
And then I'll come back and check it and see if it seems like there's a wire on it. Most likely with about 2 passes, it should pretty much take care of it. Now, since that wire is broke off of the edge,
right,
it's actually pretty coarse. There's going to be some rough spots.
Okay.
So now the trick here is we want to refine that edge, get it smooth again,
Okay.
without creating another wire. Okay. So to do that, we're going to go back to our original low angle, and we're just, with very, very light pressure, just make a couple passes across the stone, just to try to clean that up wherever that edge is gotten a little rough. So at this point, it should be pretty sharp. The other way to take care of that is if you have a piece of leather. I like it on a wooden block, and then kind of stroke the knife back and forth on the leather
finish,
to get that wire off and to clean it up. That's another option. But if you've got a fairly fine sandpaper or stone, you can usually finish up with that. So now to test to see if we've got a wire edge on here or a flat spot that wasn't sharpened, we can use paper. So what we'll do is we'll come in here.
Nice.
So that was a clean cut.
Okay.
If for some reason you get part ways through and it wants to tear the paper instead of cutting it, it means there's either a flat spot or then there's still wire edge. Okay. So the first thing I would do, we're going to say, okay, this knife maybe had a rough spot. So what I would do is I would come back and I would just go very, very light passes 2 more times on each side, just to make sure we've got that edge cleaned up, and then I'd try the paper again. If it's still grabbing, what I would recommend is to go back to maybe your 400 grit, make a couple passes, 600 again, and then take the wire off again. There might be a chance that there's a flat spot. So,
but once you do this a while, you get good at it, and it'll go fast.
Mostly, it's what a lot of people have a problem with is the consistent angle.
Right.
The other problem, and I've made this mistake for a long time, even when I first started making knives, I had a hard time getting consistently sharp. And what I was dealing with most of the time is I would sharpen and didn't realize that I still had a micro wire edge on there, and it was just bending back and forth, and it won't cut very well.
So that's where you put that big angle on there, and you just lightly take it off.
Just lightly abrade it off at a steep angle. You don't want to change your sharpening angle. So if you do more than about 2 passes or 3 passes,
you're going to go past that.
You're going to go past that, and you're going to start changing your angle. So you have to be very careful not to overdo it.
And it takes a little bit of practice.
Just a little practice,
So from the beginning, I mean, how fast could you sharpen a knife? You knowing what you're doing, and someone practicing. You sharpen a knife in what, about 3 or 4 minutes?
Yeah, 3 or 4 minutes in most cases.
Okay, all right, awesome. Well, thank you, Sam. I appreciate it, and I know Mark appreciates it.
Well, that's no problem. If you have any other questions,
I think they love your knives, and thanks, babe. Appreciate it. Good guy.
Anytime.